Hello there, my dear viewer. Once again, I have some very cool and interesting films to present to you today. All of these are recent releases on Blu-ray, and there's a lot of exciting stuff in here if I do say so myself. This selection is covering a whole host of Boutique Blu-ray labels, so there should be something here for everyone. So without further ado, let's get straight into it, and I'm going to just start with the biggest one here, the title that the most people are talking about at the moment. It is The Hitcher. This is the Second Sight Films 4K limited edition box, and this has been a long time coming. I think Second Sight first announced this about 2 years ago, or maybe even longer than that. And the reason it's taken so long to come out is because they wanted to do this right. And I can tell you, they certainly have, because the film looks excellent on the 4K disc. And I do have a direct comparison here for this one because I not too long ago got the Hitcher box from Umbrella Entertainment in Australia, and this is just a Blu-ray from a previous master of the film. So please rest assured that when you compare this new 4K restoration to how the film looked previously, this is a vast improvement. I will briefly show you what you get inside this box, but before I do, let's just talk about the film itself. And the film has quite a simple premise. We follow this hitchhiker who gets picked up by this very mysterious man played by Rutger Hauer. And he very quickly realizes that this man is, a killer. He's completely deranged. And the entire film is basically this hitchhiker trying to get away from Rutger Hauer, but he just seemingly cannot, because this character, this evil, menacing figure, is like, a spirit of not vengeance, but just a spirit of pure murderous rage, and will stop at nothing to kill this poor man. And I think because of the film's simple premise and the fact that it is a cat and mouse kind of road movie, there is so much there to play with in terms of the filmmaking. And I have to imagine this was a lot of fun to make, because there are just so many interesting scenes of violence and suspense and horror. And on that note of filmmaking, I must say that the film looks incredible through this 4K restoration. A lot of the film is set on the road, in fact it pretty much all is, and you get to see so many of the great landscapes and also all of the close-up shots and medium shots. There's so much detail there, the colours look absolutely perfect. This is honestly one of the best 4K discs I have seen this year, and I have to imagine in a few months' time, when a lot of people are doing their best of the year lists, this one has to rank very highly. So it comes in this rigid hardbound case. You can take this piece of card off. This is what has all of the information and all of the logos and such. As we've come to expect from Second Sight Films, they make these boxes perfectly. There is nothing ugly on here. They often give so much space to the original artwork and the design. So just in terms of a display piece and something to have looking nicely in your collection, this fits the bill perfectly. You may notice that this is quite a thick release, and that's because we get quite a lot inside this box. Pulling out all of the contents, I'll start with the discs themselves. They are housed in this digipack. There's the 4K disc, of course, and there is a Blu-ray disc as well. You do also get some art cards in this release. Thankfully, they are all of the new artwork designs for this particular release. Then we come to the first of the 2 books in this release, and it is a paperback copy of the screenplay of The Hitcher. So this is the final shooting script, I imagine, and yeah, you get the entire screenplay for your own perusal. But then we come to this, a hardback book, which is very thick, as you can see, and there's tons of writings in here, over 200 pages in fact, including some interviews with the director and the writer, as well as brand new essays looking into the themes, etc. of the film. It's remarkable how much care and attention and effort goes into making just these books that Second Sight do with their releases. They've done a few of these big hardback books before. They did one for Drive and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a few others that I'm forgetting. But these are incredible. So hopefully you can tell that I think this is an excellent release. And I always knew it would be because of how much time they were taking to make sure that it was perfect. So The Hitcher from Second Sight Films on the 4K gets my absolute recommendation. Moving on, we come to these two discs, and I'm going to talk about these two together because these are brand new 4K releases from Studio Canal of films that, as far as I'm aware, hadn't been released on 4K anywhere else in the world up until now. We have the spaghetti-esque Western Red Son, as well as the hot on the heels of Jaws' success, Orca. And these are coming to Studio Canal as part of their Cult Classics line. And you'll notice these are steelbooks. That's because currently these are only available in a steelbook if you want the 4K disc. Although you can get the Blu-ray versions of these just on a standard edition packaging with a slipcover. So if we look at Red Son, this has an absolutely insane cast of Charles Bronson, Alain Delon, Ursula Andress, and then Toshiro Mifune, who was, one of Japan's biggest stars, working with Kurosawa, etc. And the story goes a bit like this. These Japanese guys are transporting this very valuable sword across the West on this train. The train gets held up and robbed by bandits, and they steal this very valuable sword. And the rest of the film is Toshiro Mifune and Charles Bronson working together to get the sword back. Stylistically, it's heavily inspired by spaghetti westerns, and you would imagine that with that absolutely crazy casting, that this film would be bound to be hugely successful. But in actual fact, there's a lot of things here that don't quite mesh together, and it just ends up feeling quite weird rather than feeling cohesively amazing. There are definitely many flourishes in here to get excited for, and I have a great time watching it. Although I will say this 4K presentation, whilst there is an increase in detail for the most part, a lot of this film doesn't quite look right. And I think that's probably due to some of the materials that are available for this film. The film does also have quite a teal appearance to it, which we have come to see from a lot of these 4K discs, particularly from Studio Canal. Although a lot of people have said that the previous versions of this film that were available on Blu-ray didn't look quite right in terms of colours as well, so they might have toned it back a bit too far. And yeah, the end result doesn't quite fit because most of this film is set in the desert and it is meant to be absolutely scorching heat, yet a lot of the scenes appear very cool and very un-desert-like. So I have to imagine that the way the colours look in this film right now are not how they should look. So I have to admit, my personal opinion of the Red Son 4K is not all that great. However, with Orca, I was very pleased with how this film looks. You can see so much more detail in this image, and I think the colours here look a lot more faithful and authentic than they do in Red Son, for example. The film itself is often judged as being a Jaws ripoff, and to be honest with you, the film was greenlit off the success of Jaws by Dino De Laurentiis, who saw Jaws and thought, what can we make that is bigger and scarier than a killer shark? And they worked out a big killer whale. I think it's a much better film than many people give it credit for, particularly because it's telling this story from a bit of a different perspective. All of the humans are basically the bad guys. So we really come to empathise with the orca. And along with that, there are so many, thematic readings of this film about the environment and the importance of the environment, etc. So I think the film has a lot more going for it than just being a Jaws ripoff. That said, I'm not sure I've quite been won over by the steelbook artwork just yet. I think it's a very interesting choice that I don't think sells the film very well. But, that's not the important thing here. The film itself is the important thing. And it's great to have this on a really good 4K disc. It's just a shame Red Son was not as good. Next, I have another pairing of films that make sense to talk about together. These are two films from Shinya Tsukamoto. We have Shadow of Fire and Vital, and these are being released from Third Window Films in the UK. If you don't know the work of Tsukamoto, he's a very important filmmaker in modern Japanese filmmaking, and his films are very provocative. They don't hold back in terms of how graphic and gory and how uncomfortable they can make you feel as the viewer. And with these two films, we're seeing him working at different periods in his career, because Vital is from 2004, whereas Shadow of Fire is from just last year. In Vital, we follow this young man who is caught in a really bad car accident, and he was traveling with his girlfriend who is tragically killed, and he has lost his memory. And as he recovers, he discovers one of his old medical textbooks and decides to train to become a doctor. And in doing a lot of the dissections while he is studying, he discovers that one of the bodies he's dissecting is the body of his girlfriend who died in the car accident. And there's a lot of very strange emotions here. The way that the film is directed is just so interesting. I can't really put it into words. And this is a really powerful film. Similarly brilliant is Shadow of Fire. This is a war film that's looking at post-war Japan and the effects that the war have had on various people. We follow this young woman who is selling her body to make a living, and she is interacting with all these different clients, and she happens across this young boy, and they form a bond together. And it's when these two come into contact with this soldier who is clearly struggling with so many different things that everything just gets thrown up in the air. And this film does not hold back. It really does go to some very dark places, some very uncomfortable places. Both releases come with slipcovers and the special features on each disc. There is an audio commentary from Tom Mess on both of these, as well as different video essays and interviews with the people involved in the film. So 2 fantastic releases from Third Window. I really need to go back and watch a whole load of other Tsukamoto films that I've not seen, because to be honest, I've seen the Tetsuo movies and I've seen a few other bits, but the majority of them I've just not seen before. You can get these from most retailers at the moment, but I do know Terracotta, who specialise in Asian cinema, they have these in stock with the slipcovers. So head over there if you'd like to get these. Because I'm doing things in pairs, let's just stick with that. I've got 2 new releases from Eureka. I've got The Champions and 2 Taoist Tales. Both of these releases are just absolutely incredibly entertaining, and I didn't know anything about these films before they were announced. So not only are Eureka educating me on an area of film that I was never previously exposed to all that much, but they are entertaining me at the same time, and I'm absolutely loving it. The 2 films that you get in the 2 Taoist Tales are these absolutely mad, bonkers films that are based off Taoist folklore, and there's all sorts of martial arts wire work, some very interesting costumes, as well as these designs for, there's like this watermelon creature spirit thing that is trying to bite people's private parts off. These are films that are absolutely full to the brim with inventiveness, and they have to be seen to be believed. They're very much in the vein of The Miracle Fighters, which was another recent one that Eureka released. So I'm just loving this kind of stuff in particular. And on this release, on both films, you have various commentaries, but of course you get the ones from Frank Jeng, who I personally just love listening to. And he knows so much about everything to do with Hong Kong cinema and martial arts cinema. So this one, absolutely loved it. Similarly with The Champions, this is kind of a precursor to Shaolin Soccer, blending martial arts with football, not soccer. And it's starring the great Yuan Bu, who is just absolutely fantastic in everything I've seen, and just so charismatic. And this film in particular, I thought this was going to be one of those that was kind of a bit too gimmicky, a bit too kind of whimsical, etc. But I mean, the film just has so much charm, and I thought this was an absolutely fantastic discovery for me. You'll find a lot to delve into in the special features. Of course, we see Frank Jeng appear on an audio commentary as well. So that's 2 fantastic new releases from Eureka. I am loving all of the martial arts stuff. And to those naysayers, the vocal minority who say that Eureka should be doing different kinds of things, I say, just please, more of this. I'm absolutely happy with discovering these great films that previously were not available to us. Next, I have a very exciting second run Blu-ray release. This is The Valley of the Bees from Czech director František Vlachil. Over the years, Second Run have done a fantastic job of introducing me to the Czech New Wave and the various oddities that have been released in the Czech film industry. And in particular, introducing me to directors like František Vlachil. Previously, I got The Devil's Trap on a Blu-ray from Second Run, which is a great film. And I also have the Criterion of Markéta Lazarova, which is Vlachil's masterpiece, if you ask me. And this has not had a Blu-ray release in the UK. I think because of some problems with the censors and some of the animal stuff in here. But anyway, The Valley of the Bees is a great film which I had not seen before. We follow this young boy in the 13th century who has been beaten by his father and has been left with the church to atone for his sins. And as he has grown up, he's been forced to become one of these knights of the order and to fight for the religion. However, he decides to leave this all behind and escape and flee. And in doing so, he's hunted by the order because, they don't want him to leave, basically. It's a film that I find very beautiful at times, very disturbing at other times, and always visually arresting. So this is a fantastic release for fans of world cinema and Czech cinema. You get 2 of Lachil's short films on the special features, as well as a great audio commentary. Next, I have Julie Christie in Darling. This is the John Schlesinger film from the swinging 60s, where we follow Julie Christie, who is this very free-spirited woman who is very kind of promiscuous in a way, and she kind of rejects the Dirk Bogarde character to go off with the Lawrence Harvey character. And it's interesting because her character in this film, she's not totally likable. In a way, you very much feel sorry for Dirk Bogarde in this film. It's a film that I struggle with to work out how I actually feel about it. In terms of filmmaking, it's very inspired by the French New Wave. And a lot of people have said what's going on in this film is kind of just riffing too much on the French New Wave style. And, people have said style over substance, and I can see where they're coming from. But there are definitely moments of brilliance in here that show what the director would go on to do in things like Midnight Cowboy. This is one of Umbrella Entertainment's limited editions from Australia, so you get it in this hardbound box. Inside, you get a few things. You get the film itself in a slipcover with the original artwork. You get a booklet as well, and there are some various art cards which are just production stills, or are they behind the scenes shots? I can't quite tell, but yeah, that's what they look like. Following on from Darling, however, I have this film, Nothing But the Best, which happens to be from the same writer, Frederick Raphael. And this is a very interesting film because we have Alan Bates playing this real estate guy who is from a working class background, but he's trying to work up the ladder, and in doing so he becomes friendly with Denham Elliott's character, who is very much upper class, and kind of teaches him some of his ways. And there's friction between these two guys very quickly. It's directed by Clive Donner as well, who's a character who many people who are fans of British cinema will know. So this was a great release from them, and it's great to have it on Blu-ray because I think this has been quite hard to see for a while. It probably had been on DVD for some time, but to get it on a Vintage Classics disc was definitely a very nice welcome surprise. Then something else coming all the way from Australia. I got this imprint box set. These are 2 films from Wayne Wang. You get Smoke and Blue in the Face. If you don't know about Smoke, this was a very popular film in 1995. It was a huge independent success, and they very quickly greenlit Blue in the Face after the success of Smoke. And some of it is made up from footage that was not used in Smoke, and the rest of it was made up of new footage featuring some celebrities, some filmmakers, and it's quite interesting comparing these 2 films because Smoke is about all of these different characters that are centered around this cigar shop, and it's very conversational. It's about characters talking to one another a lot and learning about one another. And there are some great performances in Smoke. Harvey Keitel is great. William Hurt is also fantastic. But then in the sequel, you've got the addition of Jim Jarmusch is in here, and Madonna is in it for like just one very strange scene. And from what I gather, a lot of people wanted to be in the sequel because of how popular Smoke was. Blue in the Face is, I guess, more experimental, much more freewheeling. There's definitely more of an independent spirit to that than to the first film, even though both feel very independent. And the 90s was a period when independent cinema was back, and it was this big thing that even the big studios wanted to kind of get in on, so they would create their own smaller sub-studios to make it seem like they were really backing independent filmmakers. Inside the box, you get the 2 films on separate cases. Neither of these have been restored for this release or anything, so these are the same as the existing versions you can get out there on Blu-ray. Although I'll say in the UK, both of these were released on Blu-ray about 10, 12 years ago, and they've since gone out of print. So they are kind of hard to get, and I didn't have them. So to get them here on this collection together was a great thing. Though I should mention, you do get new special features that were made this year for these films. So interviews with some of the actors and the other filmmakers. It's a great release if you're a fan of these 2 films, and Wayne Wang is a filmmaker who I think is absolutely underrated. And there are so many films that he made that were truly excellent. There's a few in the Criterion collection, and there's some that just haven't had good physical media releases at all. So I'd very much like to see more come out from him. Another one from Australia and Imprint is the Film Focus Harvey Keitel set. We can't seem to get enough of Harvey Keitel. And in this, you get the films, I forget which ones are in here, Bad Lieutenant, The Young Americans, Dangerous Game, Imaginary Crimes, Clockers, and Holy Smoke. So there's a real selection of films in there from some very good filmmakers. Some of these films are available on Blu-ray elsewhere, but I think a few of these were coming to Blu-ray for the first time. I don't think The Young Americans had been on a Blu-ray before. I certainly hadn't seen it as well. And Imaginary Crimes, that was one that before this Blu-ray I hadn't seen before either. Bad Lieutenant, of course, I think has just had a 4K release from Kino Lorber, so I do want to get the 4K at some point. And then Dangerous Game, Abel Ferrara's film, also had a 4K as well, I think. So while you may not be getting the best presentations of these films that are available worldwide, you do get 6 films from an actor who, Harvey Keitel is one of the great actors, isn't he? And these 6 films, while probably aren't his biggest films, they really do show, what he could do. And he gives some great performances in these. And I really enjoy this set. I had a great time with it. And I will revisit it often over the years. I'm going to end talking about a very strange film, Sasquatch Sunset. And this is not a boutique Blu-ray, although it might as well be, because there are over 3 hours of special features on this disc, which is unusual, and I think even the US disc of this film does not have that many special features. This is a very strange film because we follow this family of Sasquatches. The film is entirely silent. There's no dialogue. They don't speak at all. They make lots of sounds, and there's a lot of toilet humor, which for some people are not going to like, but I actually found very funny indeed. Although I'll say I was watching this, and for the first 10 minutes, I kind of got what the film was doing. And I thought this is going to wear thin very quickly. But I stuck with it, and then I found myself just being absolutely taken in by it. And by the end of it, I thought this film was actually saying quite a lot. Obviously not about Sasquatches, but about human beings. Because that's what the film is about, really. There's a really good audio commentary on here, but the thing I loved watching the most is seeing the actors prepare to become the Sasquatches. There's a really good one that follows them as they get their costumes, as they're doing these acting workshops. And you see Jesse Eisenberg and Riley Keough and the rest of them really get involved in the process. And it was quite funny to watch, actually. And yeah, I had a great time with this. This was a real surprise. And I think it's a very divisive film. I think some people will hate this, so do not go and buy this blindly. Very much check if it's going to be your kind of thing. Go and watch the trailer and you'll soon know. So that about does it. It was a lot of films as always, but I've been having a great time enjoying cinema, discovering new things, and just constantly being surprised by how much stuff there is out there and how little I actually have seen. So it's a great time to be a collector. There's so much stuff out there. And don't worry if you can't keep up with all of it, because I know I'm quite unusual in this regard. Just look for the key things that would interest you and just go for those. And hopefully out of this selection, there's at least one thing that maybe has got you a bit intrigued. If you'd like to get some more recommendations from me, just click the video that's presented on screen right now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.